evening at 6 p.m. for our What is My Learning Style workshop. Here we have Dr. Denise Watis Daniels from Coppin State University, and she will be sharing with you some tips and tricks on how to use your learning style, not only to help you in your coursework, but in everyday life when it comes to being an academic and a scholar. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so welcome to everyone. Nice meeting you. Ms. Sengor did say my name is Dr. Denise Wadis Daniels. I am an associate professor of nursing at Coppin State University. I happen to be sitting right now at UMBC because I have another meeting later on after you guys. So I'm kind of tucked, I think, in it's a secure area. I'm in a lecture hall. I hope no one comes in. So I'm going to say I apologize in advance just in case we get interrupted, but I don't think we are. So I am going to share my screen. And there it is. Okay, because I use a lot of technology and it's always trying to remember which place I need to go, because Teams acts differently than Zoom. Okay, can you see my screen? Hello?
Open up. Yep.
You good?
Yes, it's
Okay,
here.
great. Excellent. So we're going to start from the very, very beginning. And so we're going to talk about learning styles and why this is important. And knowing what kind of style of learning that you have will help you with some of your test taking as well as your study skills. So here are our objectives. And there are three different kinds of learning styles. We have a style that we like to learn by looking at things. This is seeing. Sometimes people like to hear things. They're auditory learners. You want to hear what's going on. Think about if you could hear a song one time or twice, and all of a sudden you know all the words. Maybe you're an auditory. And then there's the third kind of learning style, which is doing. This is called a kinesthetic or tactile learning style, because now you would like to put things together. Think about if you ever bought furniture from IKEA, you know how that has 99 pieces and 45 different screws. Can you put it together, or do you enjoy putting it together and maybe not reading the directions completely? How do you do on puzzles? So your preferred learning style is the one that you use most. You can have more than one style, but there's one always a predominant style. And why do we care? Why are we caring about what kind of learning style? Because if you know what your learning style is, your predominant learning style, then you can adapt the way you take notes, interact in class, maybe even study for different content, knowing, utilizing these strategies that are appropriate for each one of your styles. So we just said learners have a preference for the different kinds of ways you would like to get input of information in, and also how you would like to experience some things. Some people prefer structures and others like a lot of flexibility. So let's think about that. Are you a person that you have to know on Monday that you are going to the movies on Friday? Or are you a person that's really flexible? I can call you Friday afternoon and go, hey, what are you doing? And let's go to the movies tonight. You don't have to say, oh, I don't know. You should have told me earlier, even though you don't have anything to, anything planned. Some individuals are very independent, while others like a social group to help with that learning environment. So think about it. Are you the kind of person that cringes when your faculty says, this is a group project? Oh no, I don't want to do a group project. I want to be by myself. I don't like groups. I have students that say that all the time. Or are you a person who goes, oh yeah, a group assignment. And once you get in that group, you're the one that's organizing. Okay, let's get the group chat together. I want to take everybody's name. This is what I think we should do. That's a social kind of person. Some individuals prefer, again, to hear input. Others like to see it or be much more visual. And still others like to move and put things together, that kinesthetic. So think about this. How well did you do in chemistry lab? Chemistry lab is kind of kinesthetic, that you prefer to do that. You wanted to go to lab. You weren't particularly fascinated by the lectures, but the chemistry lab really moved you. But even seeing a vision, like you would go to a museum and you learn a lot of different things, that's visual. Or again, are you the kind of person that wants to hear a topic like podcasts, that you're really not looking at the screen, but you're listening to what the people are talking about? So here is a link. I want you to take 10 minutes to complete this assessment. And then we're going to talk about it. And if you can't click on this link right here on the screen, look in the chat. The link is there. So take a couple of moments to do that. And we're going to talk about your results. I'm trying to find my sounds. I have a sound app. Of course, I can't find my sound app at this time. I was going to play some game show music.
Meantime, I'll just catch up the scholar who just entered. Thank you so much for joining us. We're taking an assessment that has been inputted into the chat. I'll copy and paste it again just to make sure you have access.
I found
So
some
right
music.
now, that works. Gives us something in the background. So right now we're taking the assessment to see what type of learner we are.
I stopped taking Ozempic, and here is why. It wasn't until I went from 207 to 139.
And I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute and come back over. And when you are finished, you can raise your hand. Anyone finished? Okay. Okay, Alicia's finished. Okay, we got another person finished. It's a couple more minutes. Okay, I'm going to go on. So, Alicia, tell me, what learning style did you discover?
I'm an auditory learner.
Okay. Does that sound like something that's true?
I think so. Yes, I think I'm both auditory and visual.
Okay,
Visual, but visual to based on my answers, visual was the lowest percentage. So I guess I'm learning more about how I learn. But yes, these qualities are very similar to the way that I receive information.
great, great,
Mhm.
great, great. Makaya, how about you?
Hello, my learning style is visual,
Okay,
and I think that is um a great match because I was reading the description of a visual learner, and most of the things that they say a visual learner does, I do, like the color coding and the drawing pictures to help explain concepts. I definitely do that.
great, excellent, excellent. And I want to make sure I pronounce this name correctly. Lula, Lulaya,
Lulia.
Lulia. Okay, thank you so much.
I got visual,
Hmm.
and yeah, I think it's accurate.
Okay, all righty. So let's talk about, I'm going back to share now. Let's talk about how we can use or implement strategies to help us go through these different kinds of learning styles. And I'm going to go from the current slide. There we go. Okay. So, wrong thing. All right, so let's talk about the various kinds of learning styles. We have visual learners. Visual learners want to see it, right? They prefer to see the information, such as pictures. Somebody mentioned that, diagrams and various kinds of cartoons and demonstrations. You know, the saying is a picture's worth 1,000 words. And to a person that is a visual learner, that is very, very true. They like to see pictures that, and that makes sense to them. However, a visual learner may be easily distracted in the lecture when there are no visual aids, when you have a person that's just standing up talking and they may be writing something on the board, but there are no really pictures. Think about textbooks that you prefer, that have maybe some charts and graphs in it. And so I teach pathophysiology and I teach pharmacology. And I had a patho book at one time that I thought was fairly good. But then I noticed a lot of my students were not using it, the patho book. And I was curious. Nobody brought it to class and they didn't seem to even buy the book. And then one day I had to go look up something in the book and realized it didn't have any pictures. It was monotone. It had black, it was purple, had some purple highlights in it, and that was pretty much it. Didn't have a lot of pictures, didn't have a lot of charts, diagrams, or anything. And I looked at the book and I thought, this is boring. I am a visual learner. I know I am. And I thought, ugh, I can see why my students aren't using this book. The book is boring. So I found another textbook that was much more colorful, had a lot of pictures, great diagrams, good charts in it. And now I'm finding my students are really using that book. So I appreciate that. Sometimes visual learners can be overwhelmed with the intense visuals that are accompanied by a lecture. So you have to be very careful. You know, you want some pictures, but you don't want too much. And so I always tell some faculty that I may be mentoring, be careful of your PowerPoint. You don't want so much stuff on there that they can't even see it. Visual learners often benefit from using charts, maps, notes, and flashcards when they're studying. And so you can use these techniques to help you to retain and understand information. But I'm gonna pause for a minute and talk about flashcards because this is something I see my students often using, but however, they're not using them correctly. So without a show of hands, as I always say, look straight ahead. If you're using a flashcard and it's here, and you're looking at it, how many planets are in the solar system? And before you even answer it, you automatically turn it over and go, oh, yeah, I knew it was 8. Then you really aren't using the flashcard correctly. You need to, when you're using a flashcard, you need to be able to say the answer on the other side before you flip it over. Think about the flashcards you used when you were in the 3rd grade learning your multiplication facts, right? The teacher flashed the flashcard in front of you and they said 2 times 2 is, and they just held it there. They didn't immediately turn it over and let you see it said 4. They wanted you to say it said 4, correct? So that's how you use flashcards. Make sure you do that. Writing notes, sometimes people use sticky notes and they highlight them and they make them all nice and pretty and things like that. Visual learners often benefit from that. As a visual learner, can you identify that you like one color marker better than another? You know, they sell a lot of times markers in packets and they have the pink, they have the blue, they have the yellow and the green. Which one do you like? The visual learner will have a favorite color. Let's talk about auditory learners. And auditory learners prefer to hear information that is spoken. Sometimes an auditory learner may go as far as taping the lectures so that they can listen to it in the car. Auditory learners absorb the lecture with very little effort. They can remember what the faculty said. Have you ever been in those groups? For those who might be an auditory learner, have you ever been in those groups and you're doing a test and you go outside in the hall after the exam and someone says, what's the answer to number 4? And somebody says, oh, it was B. And they go, oh, no, it's not. And the auditory learner go, oh, yes, because they said that in class. Auditory learners may not need careful notes to learn because they remember what someone said. So it may be difficult. They might only write down a couple of things that stimulated their thought while they were listening. Auditory learners often avoid eye contact in order to concentrate. So they're listening very intently. They may seem like they are staring off into space, but they might not be at all. They're listening very, very carefully to what's going on around them. Again, auditory learners are some of those people that, again, they can listen to a song and maybe after 2 times hearing that song, they know all the words. If you're an auditory learner, when you're reading some difficult information, some difficult content, it may help to read out loud to yourself because you can hear yourself. It makes sense. Think about this. If you're driving, remember you're driving along and you're supposed to, you know, make a left at the next traffic light and you can't understand it and you stop and you really almost read out loud what is on the GPS. Or have you ever been baking something? You're making and following a recipe and you start to read it out loud. Take 2 eggs and mix them with a half a cup of sugar. It may help, as if you're an auditory learner, to read things out loud to yourself. Auditory learners like background music when they study. And there have been a lot of different studies about having that what we call white noise in behind you. And so, yes, it can be very helpful to hear soothing music, jazz music. You might not want, you know, some, as they call it, trap music. You might not want this hard, heavy music that has a lot of words in the background. Think about this. If you're an auditory learner and you're trying to read a textbook and you've got music behind you that has a lot of words, a lot of dialogue, you're going to get easily distracted. So think about changing your environment so that you can concentrate more on what you're reading and maybe reading out loud and not having to compete about with the music in the background. So auditory learners are ones that say, let me hear it. The kinesthetic learner, or otherwise as the tactile learner, they like to do. They prefer the touch, to put together as their primary mode for taking in information. Did you like building with Legos? Is that something you liked to do? Then you might be a kinesthetic learner. In traditional learning situations or lectures, they write out all the important facts because they are still doing while they are writing. They can remember what they wrote. They can say, oh, I remember writing that on the left-hand side of my paper. They can really remember what was written or even how they put together a chart. They create these study sheets and make visual, very vivid examples of the content. For a kinesthetic learner, role playing, saying it out loud, working in a group sometimes is very, very helpful for them so that they can identify what's going on. Okay, so I am an auditory learner, very much so. Well, more of a visual. I would say I'm more of a visual learner. I like to see different things. And I can demonstrate so many heart sounds and lung sounds and things like that in my classroom because I do kind of role play it out. So I know that my primary learning style is more of visual, but I am definitely a kinesthetic learner as well. Kinesthetic learners benefit from manipulative. So think about this when you were in school. And again, you were learning how to add. Were you fascinated that they gave you blocks and you could take 3 yellow blocks and put them together with 2 green blocks and you had 5 blocks and you really like playing with the manipulatives? That is definitely a kinesthetic learner. Again, that person who can put things together. Are you somebody who really does like something structured, taking something that is completely unstructured and bringing structure to it? So kinesthetic learners like to experience it. They want to go to the museum and they want to put things together. And once they touch it and feel it, then they can get it. So when you discover your own learning style, you need to think about your favorite classes. What do your favorite classes have in common? Is it the style the teacher is teaching you? Is it something that they're doing that may be fitting your learning style? We all have classes. Some classes we like better than others. Some faculty we appreciate more than others. What is it about those classes or what is it about those faculty that draw you in? How do you think? How do you learn? How do you master facts? Do you like to discuss the content or do you like to work on your own? If you like to discuss the content, is it only with one other person or is it with multiple individuals? Do you like lecture? Some people don't. They go because they have to. Or do you rather work in a small pairing or a group? What about, again, those hands-on activities? If you have a group project and are you the one that's going to make the poster board? Because that is kinesthetic. So let's take your learning style and things we just learned about style and figure out how we can adapt them to help us gaining knowledge. Knowing your learning style and using the strategies we just kind of talked about will help to align your style with your learning and can help you study much more effectively. Think about that. If you are a visual learner and you're only trying to re-listen to the lecture, maybe you need to start diagramming things out. If you are an auditory learner, maybe you need to ask your faculty, can you record their lecture? Or maybe find a YouTube presentation that is related to the content and listen to it over and over again. I happen to record all my lectures. And my students tell me they play me in the car, they play me while they're washing dishes, things like that. It is hilarious when I go to the store, the mall, and sometimes I meet some of my students and their families, and especially if they have kids, they'll look at me and go, "That's the lady on the tape." Yeah, I'm the lady on the tape. So knowing how you study or how you learn will help you adapt some of the techniques to help you study. Are you one that needs to see it? Are you somebody that needs to hear it? Or are you the person that needs to experience it? So again, you may have a secondary learning style, and that's okay, because you can even pull in some of those strategies to support your learning. Again, do you like to view pictures or read text and make a chart as you are saying it out loud? You can combine your learning styles when you're reading content. Do you like to rehearse? Do you read the directions once and then put the furniture together without referring to directions? I always laugh at that because my father used to always make us read the directions for everything before we started out. And I even tell my students, if you can read, you can do anything. So let's finally look at some strategies. For an auditory learner, listening to the recordings in your car or while you sleep. Hey, put on a podcast, or again, get a YouTube video. You might be want to look at the video, but sometimes even just playing the video in the background and listening to it. Say the information out loud. Remember, sometimes we used a lot of auditory learning when we were learning a foreign language. You have to say those dialogues out loud. Auditory learners can really benefit from using a study group because you're talking back and forth. I always say a study group is good because you don't know what you don't know. You need to be in a study group so that a partner can say, "Oh no, I think that's not what they said," or "That's not what I read," or "I think we all need to look at that again." As an auditory learner, you might need to use your finger when you read. Now, I know in school they told you, don't use your finger. But when you're looking at difficult content or really complex information, reading with your finger helps you to make sure that you are not missing any of the words or the concepts. Visual learners use flashcards. They make graphs and maps and charts. They can even look up pictures on the internet. You're the kind of person that looks up pictures on the internet. Visual learners often watch the expressions of their teacher because, when something is very important, your teacher may narrow their eyes, they may look in a different way, and they pick up those subtle changes. Visual learners like to take notes in class because while they're writing, they're looking at it. Visual learners can benefit making practice tests or making an outline before you write the paper. You can't just sit down sometimes and just write the paper. One of my favorite episodes of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is Will Smith when he's sitting there and he has to write a paper and he's studying the exciting world of chemistry, and he never gets it done because of all these distractions that come around him. But writing an outline gives you a guide for a visual learner, keeps you on track on how to write that paper. And I know students never want to do the outline. They just want to write the paper. Trust me, writing that outline can be very helpful. The kinesthetic learner needs to be careful about distractions in their environment. Be careful with the television and the radio. Watch out for that messy desk. Having too many things around you can be very distracting. Kinesthetic learners like to go to the lab and practice and review the content. Practice, practice, practice. Kinesthetic learners can benefit by summarizing their notes, writing out answers, or even really transcribing the content they even saw in the textbook. So applying your preferred learning style to your classes can be very helpful to you. Your visual and tactile learners should take detailed notes during the lecture. I even have my students I give them lecture sheets. And in the lecture sheets, I put in the key concepts or the key words that they should listen to so that they can write them out. Tactile learners may also benefit from retyping or rewriting notes and again, making those flashcards. Auditory learners, they prefer to hear. And so they should work on strengthening maybe their visual and tactile skills. Because when you're in class, sometimes your teacher may not be as vocal as you would like them to be. And so I love watching auditory learners because you can see them taking an exam and sometimes they are speaking the answers out loud, or you see them moving their mouths. They're reading almost out loud, which you're not supposed to do in an exam, right? But you can see them processing and talking out what that answer should be on that examination. Very interesting to watch them. Tactile and auditory learners may benefit by sitting in front of the class. A, you can hear. B, for a tactile learner, you're not distracted. So you might not want to sit on the first row, but I always find it beneficial as a student myself at times to sit on at least the second row. So you're not distracted about people coming in late behind you. Tactile and auditory learners should also take notes during presentations and soon after class make additional notes. So guess what? I teach study skills and test taking classes also. But one of the things I tell everybody that after you take your notes in your class, you need to spend at least 5 minutes reviewing your notes right then and there. If you don't have time right then and there because you're on your way to another class, then make sure no later than that night, 12 hours, 6 hours later, go through your notes and read what you had written. And then put a sticky note beside the areas where you didn't necessarily get what the professor was saying, or you know that that's something you really didn't understand, and you need to start there when you do your studying. Auditory learners may benefit from a study group. Again, because you don't know what you don't know, your study group can help push you, propel you into really knowing content. A study group can help to reinforce information that was delivered during your class. Tactile learners should recreate the visuals. So you might want to redraw a picture of the heart, or redraw a chart that you saw in the textbook, because that's how you're getting it into your brain. Remember, no matter what learning style you have, it's very important to be very involved in your class. Be engaged, participate. Yield not to the temptation of sitting on the back row, because you can be easily distracted by everything in front of you. Sit up close to the faculty. Be involved in your class. When they ask a question, raise your hand. Oh, try not to look at your social media in the middle of the classroom. Meet with your instructor during your office hours. And this is something I notice the students don't like to do. Faculty have to have office hours. It's a part of our workload. We have to have office hours. And so a lot of times faculty may not be as engaging, may not be as personable in class, but go back to their office hours and sit and talk with them. They may give you some hints about how to study, what's important, what part of the content is important, what's coming up in the class. They may have a preview for you, and you will really find out a lot of times your faculty are really nice people. I told the group before, I learned that from watching a upperclassman in one of my classes when I was either a freshman or a sophomore. And I remember going down where the faculty were in this particular building, and he was always sitting on the floor outside of one of the faculty offices. And I remember looking at him like, why are you here all the time? Every time I come down this hall, you're sitting here. And he told me, I'm waiting to see Professor so-and-so. Well, why? He said, well, I always come back and talk to them after class. Huh, why? Because we go over we go over my exam. If I have questions that I didn't want to ask in class, they'll answer it for me. And he said, I just like hanging out. Wow, never thought about that. Never thought about that. So then I started going to some of my professors, and I found out I did learn a lot more because they did take the time to go over my exam a little bit more and had the opportunity to give me one-on-one time as to why that particular answer was incorrect and why the one that they selected was. And so it was very, very helpful. And ladies, I think there might be, I don't know if a gentleman is here, but ladies, let me tell you, don't wait till the last minute. Don't wait till you're failing the class. As soon as you're not doing well on exam, that's when you go see your faculty. Don't wait to see what will happen with the next exam. Always go back. Definitely, I can tell you that. Ask questions. And so you might not want to ask the question in class. Sometimes it's intimidating to ask that question in class. But guess what? Every faculty member has an email address. Email them. I tell my students they email me all the time. I may not be sitting in my office waiting for your phone call, but please email me and I will get back to you. Join a study group. Oh, but I don't know anybody in class. Yes, you do. You know somebody, that person who sat beside you. We have a tendency to nest. Everybody sits in the same seat every time. So that person who sits beside you every Wednesday, that may be your study partner. Talk to them. Once you get in your major, you often move through your classes and cohorts. So you're going to see the same people over and over because you all have to take 304, then 305, and 306, and 401. You start to move together in a cohort, start working together in a group. Don't get distracted. Stay on task. Keep a schedule of your assignments. Now, you are all UNCF scholars, so I know that you all have a calendar where you have everything written down of what you're supposed to do when things are needs to be done, things are due for classes. So don't get distracted and stay on task. Ask to review your exams, I just said, in a timely manner. Right after the exam is done, faculty may not have that time right then and there, but make an appointment to go back over every one of your exams. Don't wait till the last minute. I always know students that when they want to review exam 1, and now it's December when classes are getting ready to be over, the semester is almost over, you're not looking for knowledge, you're looking for points. We know that. If I just need 7 points. I got to find 7 points. No. After every exam, make an appointment and see your faculty member. Don't miss class. It's raining. Try not to miss class because once it's over, it's over. And then you, especially if you were an auditory learner, you didn't get an opportunity to hear it. If you are a visual learner, you didn't get the opportunity to see it. And if you are a tactile learner, that means you have to build it without any hint as to what needs to be done. it's important to go to class. So that's the end. And are there any questions?
No questions? Oh, I see one hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, excuse me. Hi. When you guys are faced with like something to study or something to go over for your jobs, what strategies do you personally use to make sure that you come out on top and you come out successful with the duty that you need to complete?
I can talk for me. I studied the same way I had been studying after I got the rhythm and the strategies. I do the same thing. I write out everything. I write out everything and go over it. I make mnemonics for different things. I am also that visual person that I will act it out. I am in a health career. So, I mean, like I said, I was I was popular in my study group because I can do all the gates. I can make all the heart sounds. I can make all the breath sounds. Um, I'm also very visual in that I demonstrate so many things in class using regular materials. And so I write out things all the time and put them in lists. And if I can write them out and not check my notes, then I know it.
And yes, just to add, so I'm very similar in that regard. I'm a visual, well, a hybrid between visual and kinesthetic. So I write out everything. I was actually just writing some notes out that I have to send out tomorrow as we were doing this workshop. And that helps me remember. I may not remember fully what I have to do, but I say, hey, I put something down there that I was supposed to do something. So let me refer back to whatever that is. And so writing things out is really helpful, using different pens. So as mentioned, if you have a favorite pen, I have different colors that I use for different things, highlighters, those kind of things. I also add tabs. So this is my work notebook, essentially. And so I color coded it with various tabs, as you can see at the top. So depending on the different programs I have, I just tabulate it based off of those colors. So I'm able to keep track of those things. And I also take copious notes. So as I am, you know, going through a program or trying to devise a plan, I take notes on what I'm thinking, and the outline really helps me as well. So it's a mind dump, if you will. Um, and so, yeah, that's what I have. And I know, not to put her on the spot, we have another UNCF employee here. So I don't know if she wants to
Yeah, I
share.
was going to speak. Again, I'm learning that I have a different learning style, but now it makes sense because I do voice notes a lot to myself.
Mm.
And based on the answers to my questions, I'm an auditory learner. I don't like to hear myself talk, but it helps me to remember, and I do tend to repeat things out loud. I also rehearse a lot before, if it's a presentation, or I read my emails out loud, things like that. So those are some of the ways I prep. But I'm also a color coding person, a folder person. I will write down something, a task, and then the way I know that I did it is I scratch it out in red pen
Mm.
because black just won't work.
Thank you.
That was a great question. Thank
Yep.
you to the chat. Oh, yes, you were confirming and affirming me in my color coding. So thank you. But are
I
there
had a
any additional questions? Or
I had a
Dr.
boss once that oh my goodness, we would come to a meeting and she would have 5 different color pens in front of her, and she had 5 different sticky notes, different colors in front of her. And it was a big deal to her to have all these different colored folders. Each color meant something, and they were so coordinated, but she was visual. And that made a big difference to her. And so she knew red folders meant this, blue folders meant that, pink folders meant something else. And if they had the right color sticky note on it, then she knew what that meant to her. It drove us a little bit crazy, but I do understand it and can appreciate that learning style. And then that when I went back and looked at it and started researching some things on learning style, it made sense to me. I didn't think she was just weird. It was her style.
And so I know we had some scholars join us in the midst of our presentation. So no worries, you will get a copy of this so that you can catch up and apply some of these tools. But I also put in the chat, I don't know if you all get mad, I'm thinking about it, the learning style quiz. So I will resubmit that into the chat for you all to take the quiz and just identify where you are in terms of your learning style so that you can apply some of what we mentioned. But do you all have any questions concerning the learning styles or anything that you might have heard you were joining? Okay, I take silence as a no. So I'm not going to belabor this anymore. Thank you all again for joining us. Again, you will get a copy of this recording, so no worries. But thank you again just for being here. I know it's a Wednesday afternoon for some of my scholars who are in Minnesota. Thank you so much for joining, as I know there's a time difference. And we will follow up next week in terms of all the recordings. Oh, and there's an event for early talent opportunity programs. So be on the lookout for your emails about that. That's an opportunity for you to learn more about scholarships and internship opportunities within UNCF. And so we'll be looking forward to seeing you at that event. But without further ado, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you all. You stopped the recording?